Let's talk about tithing.
Yeah, let's talk about tithing.
That's something I didn't know about until Nathan came here.
Yep.
And you talked about that in that video as well. So what is it? Where did it come from? Should we be doing it?
Yeah. So the tithe is an Old Testament law, primarily around agriculture, and it wasn't just 10%. It was probably around 23%. And it's talking about, hey, the first fruits that are coming in, you should be giving to those.
The what groups?
The first fruits that are from your crops. You're talking about an agricultural society. So as they're getting grain and all that sort of stuff, they're tithing off of their grain, and it also took care of the priests. There was a component to it of almost like a civic use for sometimes infrastructure and stuff like that as well. So it's to take care of the Levites, but then there was also stuff to take care of just the society as a whole.
Who are the Levites?
The priests in the Old Testament.
Okay.
Yeah. So the Levites are the priests. They would minister in the temple, and so the tithe would go to them to care for them. And so it's one of the commandments in the Old Testament, and it was had multiple utilities to it. In our modern day context, we as followers of Jesus, we don't follow the letter of the law for the Levitical law, but we do extract principles from it, right? And there are certain laws that are moral, there's certain laws that are civic, there's certain laws that are identifying markers for the Jewish people, right? Tithing, those sorts of things. And so today, in our context, New Testament Christianity, with the letters of Paul, we're called to radical generosity. We're called to give and be generous, open-handed, not under compulsion, but to be consistent in our giving. And so when most people are talking about tithing, they're not saying you have to give a literal 10% or God's going to curse you. Generally speaking, there are some people that do that, but generally speaking, when we're talking about tithing, we're using it shorthand for saying, hey, this is a great principle for you to walk out. There's something to this. In the same way we would say Sabbath is good for you, right? Most of us, we believe in Sabbath. I'm assuming you probably take a day off at least once a week. Maybe you might turn your phone off. Maybe you may not turn your phone off. Maybe you don't do any work, but you practice the principle of Sabbath. Now, in the Old Testament, they got really gnarly with the Sabbath laws, right? Like you couldn't do any work. You couldn't do this. And so we take Sabbath and we say, yeah, taking a day off is good. Yes and amen. Every single person should take a day off. And so in the same way, we use to tithe, we use it as a short form. We're not saying, hey, if you don't give a 10%, you are cursed and you're disobedient. We're saying, hey, this is a great financial principle to live by. Learn to live on 90 and give 10. And for me and my wife, man, we've consistently given above 10% for decades. While we were struggling, we just said, hey, we're going to carve out generosity. That is a value of ours. And we're going to consistently give at least 10%. It's a rule of thumb. It's not a law. No one's saying you're going to go to hell if you don't give 10%, but it's a good benchmark to say, hey, none of it is mine anyway. It's all God's. God's giving me money and letting me steward it, manage it for him. So we're going to give 10. We're going to look for opportunities to give to other charities. We're going to give the single mom in our community and try to take care of them as well. And we're going to save and we're going to invest. And then we're going to enjoy the fruits of our labor as well. And I think if you look at any financial expert, they would put together those four things: save, give, invest, enjoy. This is whether it's Dave Ramsey or secular psychology would tell you there's something to giving. In the Christian worldview, just says, hey, we're going to use shorthand the word tithe, and we're going to say that's a good principle to live by. But we're not going to condemn you to hell for it. If you don't give, okay, we understand, right? And so, but we've practiced it. We practiced it when we were in debt. We practiced it while we were getting out of debt. We practice it now, and we give above 10% now. And then if you factor in all the charities and all the other stuff, because I think we give what we value too. So if I value my local church, if I value the communication of the gospel, I'm going to give to it. I want to support it. If people value your show, they partner with you on Patreon, as they should, because they value you. And so this idea of like giving is somehow bad or it's evil or you're not supposed to do it. I would agree with Nathan. I would say, yeah, I don't think it's a literal 10%. I think it's a principle that most of us say that's a good principle to live by.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I mean, does it always have to do with money, or can you give time? Can you give?
I think you can give everything. I think you give time. I think you give resource. I think you can be generous with so many different things. For us, it is money, because I don't want. There's a joke we always say, like the last part of a man to get saved is his wallet. You know, we're so attached to our money. We're so attached to our finances. And so I think it can be multiple things, but I think when you're willing to sacrifice financially and say, hey, these are my values, this is what I believe in, and I'm willing to contribute in this way, something unlocks. And I can't even put words to it, but something unlocks, and has always unlocked for me. Can I give you a quick tithing story? This is going to sound so cheesy. Okay, so I come to faith. I'm trying to live this stuff out. This is like, I'm surrendered to Jesus. I had this 1987 Toyota Celica. This is back in the day. I don't know if you had any friends like me, but we would put the big 10-inch subs in the trunk and drive around, boom, boom, right? And I had this Celica, and one day I come out, and someone broke into my car, and all of my sound system is jacked. It's all gone, right? And I'm like, man, this sucks. I call the police. The police come. The police run fingerprints, and they do this whole investigation, right? This whole thing. So I forget about it. I start going to church. I start giving. I'm working at Pizza Hut. Like, I'm not making any money. My little $250 check, I'm in faith. I'm going to practice this principle, because I think there's something to the principle of giving in faith. I'm not lying to you. A year and a half later, but it was the first month I started giving to my church, started being generous, I get a check in the mail for $800. They had caught the kid doing something else that broke into my car, threw the fingerprints, made him pay restitution, and sent me the money, didn't call me, nothing. And I got a random check in the mail for $800.
Wow.
As a kid, to me, and I'm like, I just started doing this. And I'm not saying every time you give, God's going to send magic fairy money from heaven. Like that's not the point. But for me, it was like, I'm just going to be faithful with this little bit I got. And all of a sudden, that same week, I get a $800 check, you know? And the weird part is, man, the more I'm generous, the more I give money away, the more I'm just willing to just go, Lord, it's yours anyway. What do you want me to do with this? Like, I'm going to provide for my family. I'm going to save. I'm going to invest. I'm going to do all that stuff. Lord, what do you want me to do with this, man? Is it being generous to that waitress that, man, you could tell she's had a rough week, and let me just be radically generous with her and just blow her mind, you know? And then like do that. They run and chase you out the restaurant. They're crying, like, because that mattered so much. I think that's the heart posture. It's not about
that's how I like to give.
Yeah,
I like to. I mean, I'm very choosy on who I give to, both time and money. But, you know, I mean, we a lot of times before the interview, we'll go to breakfast, stuff like that. And I always overtip because, I mean, I know where we live. It's hard to get by here as a waitress, you know, and so I always do that. I'm always looking, but I just, you know, I love to give. Almost, you know, I've been told by numerous people that, you know, I overgive, and that can cause resentment. I struggle with that sometimes, but you know, I'm very choosy because I want to know that whatever I'm giving, whether that's time or money, that it's not going to be wasted, you know? And so I'm looking for somebody that's going to use what I give them in the right way to better their life, you know, and you don't always see that with a church or a nonprofit, or, you know, and I'm not picking on those because there's a lot of good ones, you know, there's a lot of good nonprofits out there, a lot of good churches out there. I've given to both, but, you know, I like to see the direct impact, and I like to see you know, even with, you know, a lot of the people that I bring on the show, I mean, there's guys that I've been watching, and women, you know, for years. Like, are they really trying to do what they say they're doing? You know, are they on the hamster wheel and they're not getting any traction? You know, are they going to give up? You know, is the money going to get to them? You know, when they do make it, are they going to be, you know, flaunting all kinds of, you know, erotic shit all over the internet? You know, and that's not who I want to give to. I want to give to the person that's going to appreciate it, use it, better their life, better their family life, better the world. You know, and so, I mean, and in God's eyes, you know, does it matter who you give to? Does it have to be to the church? Can it be to anybody? Can it just be generosity in general?
Yeah, I think, yes, I think it's ASN. I think you're a generous person. You know how fun it is to give. I think for me, man, I'm so in love with my local church. And I'm so in love with how God is using us. We do a thing called Bless Local, where we just give a lot away to our community and go above and beyond to be generous to the single mom, to be generous to those who are struggling. We give a lot away to missions. We do a lot with disaster relief in other parts of the world. And I want my pastors to do well. I want them to be able to afford a home and buy a home in the city they live in. I want them to be able to, I want them to be able to send their kids to college without worrying about finances. I want them to do well because I value them. We value public school teachers. I value my pastor a lot. And I value the men and women that are like, they're laying their life down, they're preaching, and this is their service, this is their contribution. I want them to be well taken care of. And so I have a church that I'm so in love with, and I love everything that's happening at Rhythm Church. And I would encourage people, if you're at a church and they're not transparent with the finance, like I just had a buddy that hit me up and was like, hey man, like my friend called this church and he gives there and they wouldn't share any of the information with him, And I was like, oh, well, that sounds a little weird. Most churches do. But if that's the case, he might want to look for another church. If they're not willing to offer what anything they're doing with the money, I wouldn't want to give either. And so I think the gathering of the local believers every week with the preaching and the teaching and the discipleship and the community that's happening, I value that, and I think the scriptures call us to value that, and I think we should give to that. Does it have to be a percentage and some legalistic thing? I don't think it has to, but to me, man, I have it by the grace of God, and generosity is the antidote to greed. And I think we have a lot of consumerism and self-centeredness in America, and if I could be generous, and by the way, I give beyond just churches. There's amazing nonprofits I partner with every month. There's missionaries I partner with every month. I give beyond just my local church, but I get to see the impact of what happens in my local church. I get to see the young men. We're next to Camp Pendleton, big Marine base right there in Oceanside. Men coming in, they're broken, they're hurting. They start coming to church. They start getting discipled. People are pouring into them, and within 6 months, they're totally different people. Like I value that, and I'm gonna go above and beyond. My goal, and I'm not trying to like brag or flex, and maybe we need to cut this out. But like my goal is to
They're not taking it that way.
Yeah,
didn't come off that way.
My goal is to be the single biggest giver in my church. Like I want to be the single biggest giver in my church, and that's what I'm shooting for. I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet, but that's I work hard because I value these things.
Do you think that churches can overemphasize growth instead of spreading the message?
Absolutely. I think churches can do all sorts of goofy things. I think overemphasizing growth. I think overemphasizing, maybe overemphasizing politics. I think overemphasizing the social programs. I think there's all sorts of things they can do. The idea is, how many people can you be faithful with? Is it 1,000? Is it 1,400? Is it 10,000? Is it 5,000? Right? What are people doing? In our church. The church that planted my church is a church called North Coast Vista. And ironically enough, when I had a conversation with Nathan in January, I would love to hear if Nathan would acknowledge that he said this to me. When I told him the circles I'm in, and I said, hey, this is who my pastor is. This is the pastor who pastors him and helped plant our church. He told me, oh, bro, you're connected to the gold standard of this stuff. You're around guys that are doing the best at this when it comes to transparency. I wonder if he would say that now, but I used to think growth is bad, big church is bad. And then I went to North Coast and I met Pastor Chris Brown. And what happened was, man, one of my close friends, he lived in my studio. I used to rent 2 condos next to each other. Me and my family lived out of one. I had my studio kind of like this, not as nice as this, but in the downstairs of the other. And the upstairs, we'd always have rooms, different rappers, creative people. Sometimes family would stay in the rooms. And one of my friends, his name was Tanner Ross. He got leukemia. And I was downstairs. He came down and told me he was going to the hospital. We thought it was nothing. He got leukemia, and he beat it the first time. But the second time, on Thanksgiving Day of November 2022, Thanksgiving Day, he came back and he died. And I watched for those several years how North Coast Church wrapped their arms, not just around Tanner, but around his wife, around his family, around his friends, how they showed up for them. And I got to see a big church disciple and love and lead and pay and take care of and sacrifice for a dear friend of mine. And so I was critical of churches up until that point. I was critical of big churches. And now my schema shifted where I said, okay, yes, I'm a local church guy, but like, man, big churches aren't bad. They're doing good. And when I saw that, and I saw Chris Brown, and yeah, man, I saw it up close. You know, I saw the mercy and the grace. I feel goofy even crying about it because it's a good thing. It's a good thing to see churches do good things. And it's the biggest church in our city. It's a $30 million budget. And Pastor Chris Brown is one of the most transparent people I've ever sat with. And I've seen him be generous to my pastor and plant us and take care of Rhythm Church. And I've seen him be generous to me. And that's when my mind, like, it shifted. Like, big is not bad. Oftentimes they have more resources, and to see them lock arms and be there for this family. And I just saw Tanner's parents. His dad just came to my book launch event, and they're still hurting, but the church is still with them. They're still next to him. And we did a vlog on the church, because I said, I gotta highlight what God's doing here. We did a vlog, and it was like investigating the biggest mega church in my area. You know, we're being spicy with the title. And while we're doing the vlog, his mom is there, and she's just there, and they're just taking care of her and loving on her, giving her something to do, giving her dignity after burying a child. You know, this is years later at this point. So I got to see it up front. Like, I got to see it up front and go, and they showed up. They showed up for my friend.
Wow. You want to take a break?
Yeah.
Let's take a break.
Hey everyone, I got big plans coming up for this channel. More commentary, some interviews, and eventually it's going to be to go to biblical sites and do videos there on the history of the Bible. We're talking Sodom and Gomorrah, Mount Sinai, walking Jesus' footsteps, and there's two things I need to do that. One, of course, God Almighty, and the second one is you, so hit that subscribe button.